Her daughter forged her name to steal the house, calling it help. The mother stayed silent until she sold her jewelry and bought the deed back. They were family, but fraud made them enemies. $85,000 in heirlooms unlocked a storm no one saw coming. While the daughter planned renovations, the mother filed lawsuits. Now the home's in her name again, and the eviction notice is real. All right, before we dive into this crazy story, do me a favor. Subscribe and tell us where you're watching from. The late afternoon light stretched thin through lace curtains, casting long gold slats across the bedroom carpet. Dust motes floated like tiny secrets in the air. Norma Blake stood beside her cedar dresser, one hand resting on the jewelry chest her late husband gave her on their 15th anniversary, a chest she'd polished more often than she'd opened. Angela was already there, impatient fingers drumming on the lid. "Mom, honestly, what's the point of keeping all this?" she said, flipping it open before Norma could answer. The hinges creaked like something waking that shouldn't. Inside, the soft velvet trays gleamed with decades of memory, the pearl choker worn on her wedding day, her mother's sapphire ring, the Art Deco pendant her father smuggled home from an estate sale in 1948. Ray hovered in the doorway, shoulders slumped under a day's worth of drywall dust. His work boots left faint prints on the cream carpet. He gave Norma a helpless shrug, the kind men give when they've already surrendered. Norma's voice came out quiet but steady. "You could have asked before you opened that." Angela waved a dismissive hand. "I didn't think you'd mind, it's just jewelry. Half of it's probably outdated anyway. We could use the money for real improvements around here. You know, a new kitchen. Something that actually adds value." Norma stepped closer and gently closed the lid, her palm resting on the worn brass latch. "This house has plenty of value." Angela crossed her arms. "Mom, you don't even wear this stuff. It's just sitting there while everything around you falls apart. Ray and I are trying to keep things together." Ray shifted, staring at his boots. "Angie, maybe we should—" "Don't," she snapped, without looking at him. Then, softer, turning back to Norma. "We're family. I'm just trying to make things practical. Sentiment doesn't pay bills." Norma inhaled slowly, the scent of lavender polish and rain drifting through the cracked window. She studied her daughter, the contour of the same jawline she used to kiss goodnight, now tight with calculation. "And selling my memories does?" Angela rolled her eyes, already pulling her phone from her pocket. "You're being dramatic." The screen's blue glow lit her face as she scrolled. "There are estate buyers downtown who specialize in vintage pieces. It's not like we'd throw them away. You'd get fair value." Ray finally stepped forward, rubbing the back of his neck. "Angie, come on. Let's just talk about it later, okay?" But she ignored him, still typing. Norma turned toward the window where the rain had begun to tap softly against the glass. Outside, the live oaks bent in the wind, their heavy branches whispering over the roof like old voices reminding her to stand firm. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand, a single text from May Willis. "Tell me she didn't say that." Norma's lips twitched into something between a sigh and a smile. She typed back quickly, "You know her." May's response came fast. "Then keep that chest closed, honey. Some things aren't for their kind of improvement." Norma set the phone down, the quiet room filling again with the steady rhythm of the rain. Behind her, Angela was still talking, something about market value, about how jewelry depreciates if left too long. Norma didn't respond. She walked to the bed, smoothing the coverlet her husband had insisted on buying when they first moved in, the one embroidered with tiny magnolia blossoms. She felt their absence everywhere. His laugh, his steady hands, the way he used to tell her she looked like trouble when she wore the sapphire ring. Angela's voice broke through again, sharper now. "You're not listening. We need that money." Norma turned, eyes calm. Then you should have saved it. For the first time, Angela faltered. Her mouth opened, closed again. No comeback ready. The storm outside cracked open with a deep rumble as if punctuating the silence. Ray stepped back, muttering, "I'll wait in the truck," and disappeared down the hall. Angela glared at her mother, the moment stretched tight as wire. "You're just being stubborn. I don't know why you make everything a fight." Norma looked down at the chest one last time. "Because you've already opened what wasn't yours." Angela's face hardened. "You'll regret being so selfish." Norma brushed past her and opened the door. "Maybe," she said softly, "but I'll do it on my own terms." Angela stayed frozen beside the dresser, the jewelry chest gleaming faintly in the lamplight. Closed now, but somehow louder than before. Downstairs, the front door clicked shut. The rain came harder. Norma stood under the porch light, watching the water race down the gutters, her phone still in her hand. One last message from May appeared. "Want me to bring coffee tomorrow? We'll talk about options." Norma typed back, "Bring your strongest. It's time I took inventory." She slipped the phone into her pocket and watched the storm roll in, thunder cracking above the old roofline. And somewhere behind her, upstairs, Angela's footsteps moved toward the jewelry chest again. By morning, the storm had passed, leaving the air heavy with the smell of wet earth and the faint metallic tang of humidity. Light slanted through the blinds, catching the sheen of the jewelry chest like an invitation, or a dare. Norma stood before it in her robe, coffee steaming beside her on the dresser. She unlocked the brass clasp, slow and deliberate this time. The lid lifted with a quiet sigh. Inside, the pieces lay still, their stories resting like old letters sealed long ago. She pulled out a notepad and pen from the drawer, labeling each tray with crisp precision. Pearls, 1964. Sapphire ring, estate of Clara Blake. Art Deco pendant, 1930s. Likely platinum filigree. Her handwriting stayed neat even when her hands trembled. A soft knock on the half-open door broke her rhythm. Angela's reflection appeared in the mirror. Already dressed for the day, hair fixed, perfume too strong for morning. "You're up early," Angela said, forcing a brightness that didn't fit. Norma didn't turn. "Couldn't sleep." Angela leaned against the doorframe, arms folded. "If you're doing what I think you're doing—" "I'm cataloging," Norma said, voice even, "so there's no confusion about what belongs to whom." Angela hesitated. "You make it sound like I'm stealing from you." Norma replaced a velvet tray and closed the lid halfway. "A person can't steal what isn't offered." Angela's eyes flicked to the notepad, then to the chest. "You're being stubborn again." Norma looked at her in the mirror. "I'm being thorough." Angela muttered something under her breath and left, the click of her heels echoing down the hall. The quiet returned, dense, charged. Norma exhaled and pulled open the next tray. Each piece glimmered faintly in the morning light. Small victories, tokens of a life that had held its own kind of worth. She picked up the Art Deco pendant and turned it over. The clasp was engraved with an unfamiliar mark, a tiny R inside a diamond. She hadn't noticed that before. By the time she'd finished, the notepad was full, her coffee gone cold. She placed a few chosen items, pieces that mattered, that still felt alive, into a small velvet pouch. When she tightened the drawstring, she felt the weight settle like a secret decision. Downstairs, the kitchen smelled of toast and impatience. Angela sat at the table, eyes glued to her phone. Norma paused in the doorway long enough to catch a glimpse of the screen. The search bar read, "Vintage jewelry buyer near me." Angela looked up too late. Norma's voice was calm but cut clean. "If you find one worth my time, let me know." Angela froze, guilt flickering before pride smothered it. "I was just checking market rates. You said you wanted fair value." I said I wanted clarity, Norma replied, moving past her to pour a new cup of coffee. You were looking for profit. Angela stood, flustered. You can't keep blaming me for. But Norma wasn't listening anymore. She walked into the living room, phone in hand, and typed a message. Coffee ready? I need your help today. May's response came almost instantly. Always. Bring your pretties. I'll drive. By mid-morning, the two women were parked outside Rowe & Sons Appraisals, a converted 19th century storefront on King Street. The gold-lettered windows gleamed even under the overcast sky. Inside, the space smelled faintly of lemon polish and history, mahogany counters, glass cases glinting with time. May elbowed her gently. This is the kind of place that doesn't haggle. You chose well. Gareth Rowe looked up from behind the counter, a tall man in a tailored vest, silver hair neatly combed, eyes sharp but kind. Ladies, good morning. What can I do for you today? Norma set the velvet pouch on the counter and untied it carefully. The moment the pendant caught the light, his expression shifted. He leaned closer, breath slowing. Where did you get this? Norma met his gaze. It's been in my family longer than I've been alive. He lifted the piece with gloved hands, turning it under the lamp. French, late 1920s. René Lalique design. Extremely rare. You've been sitting on something extraordinary. May whistled under her breath. Told you that chest wasn't junk. Gareth smiled faintly. Not junk at all. This pendant alone could fetch more than most collections. He glanced at Norma. Would you like an official appraisal? Norma's heart ticked slower, steadier. Yes, she said. Appraise everything. May squeezed her shoulder, proud and silent. As Gareth disappeared into the back room with the pendant, the faint chime of the shop bell broke the quiet. Norma turned. Through the glass door, she caught a glimpse of a familiar figure standing across the street. Angela, pretending to window shop, phone still in her hand. May followed her gaze. You didn't tell her, did you? No, Norma said softly, watching her daughter's reflection blur in the glass. But she's about to find out. The rain had finally burned off by the time Gareth returned from the back room, his gloved hands carrying not just the pendant, but a manila folder thick with paperwork. The overhead light caught on the pendant's surface, throwing fractured rainbows across the glass countertop. Norma and May sat quietly, their reflections faint in the glass. Angela was gone from the street, at least, for now. Gareth placed the folder down with care. I've completed the full assessment, he said, removing his glasses and folding them neatly on the counter. His voice dropped an octave, steady, deliberate, almost reverent. Mrs. Blake, your collection is worth approximately $85,000. May blinked. 85,000? Gareth nodded. If sold as a set? Individually, some pieces could command more. Norma didn't move. The words seemed to hang in the air between them, shimmering like the pendant's light. Finally, she said, That'll do. May looked at her. Norma. But Norma's tone held no hesitation, no tremor. I'll take the check. Gareth studied her a moment longer, as if weighing her resolve. Then he gave a small nod. I can arrange a direct purchase through my estate account. Funds will clear within the hour. He hesitated, then added, You understand, Mrs. Blake. Once it's processed, these items will no longer be retrievable. Norma's gaze flicked toward the window where the ghost of her daughter's reflection had been. That's the point, Mr. Rowe. May pressed her lips together, half in awe, half in concern. You sure about this, sugar? Norma reached for the pen Gareth offered. I've never been sure. The pen scratched quietly as she signed each page. Her signature, looped, precise, felt like the clean slice of a door closing for good. When Gareth handed her the check, the number glowed against the crisp paper. $85,000 and some change, the kind of sum that could change a woman's position in her own story. He cleared his throat. "There's someone I'd like you to speak with. A client of mine, Jude Moreno. He's a real estate attorney. Handles transfers, trusts, and quiet acquisitions. Very discreet." Norma looked up, curiosity tightening her expression. "Why would I need a lawyer?" "Because," Gareth said gently, "people with something valuable usually do." May gave a slow, knowing nod. "Smart man." Gareth slid a business card across the counter, white, simple, embossed in silver. Jude Moreno, Esquire, a Charleston address, a single phone number. Norma tucked the card carefully into her purse beside the check. The movement was unhurried, deliberate, like a ritual. As they stepped back into the humid air, May looped her arm through Norma's. "You planning something, I can feel it." Norma didn't answer. The shop door closed behind them with a muted click, the bell's chime fading into the street noise. May pressed on, her voice low but edged with mischief. "If I were you, and I'm not, thank heavens, I'd take that pretty check and look into the deed for that house. You know, the one your daughter keeps calling hers." Norma's eyes narrowed slightly, not in anger but in calculation. "What makes you think I haven't thought of that?" May grinned. "Because if you had, you'd already be making phone calls." They reached May's car, an aging Lincoln that smelled faintly of vanilla and old maps. Norma stared out the passenger window as the city passed, brick storefronts, the sweep of magnolia trees, puddles reflecting the clouds that still lingered from last night's storm. Her expression didn't change, but her fingers brushed the edge of her purse again, feeling the crisp check inside. Her face was unreadable, but her silence wasn't empty. It was waiting. That evening, back at the house, the tension was thicker than the humidity. Angela's voice carried from the kitchen, sharp, brittle. "You told me the shop guy said it wasn't worth much." Ray's reply came tired, worn thin. "I didn't say that. I said your mom didn't say what she got." Angela paced, heels clicking against the tile. "She's hiding something, Ray. You saw her leave with that woman, and that stupid velvet pouch." "Angie," he interrupted, voice low, "we've already pulled every dollar from the refinance. We can't keep picking at her. Just let it go." "Let it go," she hissed. "We were supposed to use that money for the renovation, for our future." Ray leaned against the counter, rubbing his temples. "We used it for bills. You said you'd figure out the rest." Angela's expression cracked. "And what? She gets to just, what, run off and cash out while we're drowning?" From the hallway, Norma listened quietly. The air smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and resentment. She could see their reflections in the dark window glass, two figures arguing, both too proud to admit they'd already lost. She turned away without a word, walking upstairs, the envelope pressed against her chest. In her bedroom, she opened her nightstand drawer and placed the check beside Jude Moreno's business card. The lamplight glinted off both. Her phone buzzed. Another message from May. "Tomorrow? We start with that deed." Norma stared at the screen, thumb hovering for a moment before she typed back, "Tomorrow. I'm ready." She locked the drawer and exhaled, the first real breath of freedom she'd taken in years. Outside, thunder rolled again in the distance, soft, almost approving. The next morning, Charleston's sky looked washed clean, but the air still carried the ghost of last night's storm. Norma sat across from Jude Moreno in his small downtown office, a place that smelled faintly of paper, cedar oil, and quiet certainty. Jude, a man in his late 50s with patient eyes and a trim, salt and pepper beard, paged through a thick folder of documents Gareth had helped her obtain. He wore reading glasses that slipped down his nose as he read, lips pressed into a neutral line that didn't reveal much. Norma waited without fidgeting, hands folded in her lap. She'd lived long enough to know silence unnerved people far more than words ever could. Finally, Jude looked up. "You said your daughter handled the refinance paperwork?" "She said she was getting lower insurance rates." "I didn't think much of it," Norma replied. "I don't remember signing anything." Jude turned another page, his brow tightening. "According to these records, you didn't. These signatures." He angled the papers toward her. "They're forged. Whoever did this used your name, but the notary stamp doesn't match any registered in the county." Norma leaned closer, her pulse steady but cold. The scrawl on the page was almost hers, the curl of the B, the neat loop of the K. "Almost. That's not my hand," she said, voice quiet but sharp enough to cut through the hum of the desk fan. Jude set the papers down and steepled his fingers. "If fraud was involved, we can reverse it. It'll take time, but there are channels. You'd have to file for deed restoration and request a freeze on the property until the matter's settled." "Do it," Norma said without hesitation. He studied her for a beat. "You understand this means an investigation, statements, affidavits, possibly court appearances?" "I've survived worse," she said simply. "This is just paperwork." A corner of his mouth twitched, half respect, half disbelief. "Most people your age would walk away from a mess like this." Norma looked him square in the eye. "Most people my age stopped letting their children walk over them, too." He gave a soft chuckle, pushed the documents toward her, and slid over a pen. "Then let's start here." Her signature flowed across the page, steady, deliberate, unshaken. The sound of the pen against paper felt like reclaiming oxygen. When they were finished, Jude said, "Once the freeze is filed, they won't be able to sell, refinance, or take additional loans against the house. It'll lock everything down until the case clears." "Good," she said. "Let them sit in their own silence for a while." That evening, the house felt heavier than usual, as if the walls had learned too many secrets. The TV flickered faintly in the living room where Ray sat nursing a beer, his boots kicked off. Derek was on the couch, laptop open but barely watching the screen. The air between them hummed with unspoken things. Ray glanced toward the stairs before lowering his voice. "Hey, bud, you think your grandma might help us out?" "Just for a little while." Derek frowned. "Help you how?" "Cash flow's tight, that's all. Just a short loan till the equipment job pays off." Derek hesitated. He'd learned not to promise money he didn't control. "You should ask her yourself." Ray gave a dry laugh. "Yeah, I tried that once. She said she's repurposing her funds or something. Sounds like a polite way of saying no." "Maybe she means she's saving for something." Ray's voice hardened. "She's got no business saving when we're keeping the roof over her head." Derek said nothing. He remembered the way his grandmother's eyes had looked lately. Sharp, calculating, alive in a way he hadn't seen in years. Whatever she was saving for, it wasn't them. Upstairs, Norma sat at her desk sorting envelopes. One was addressed to the county clerk. Another bore Jude's neat handwriting. The third was sealed. A certified request for a property freeze. She laid her hand on it, palm firm. Her phone buzzed with a text from May. "You did it?" Norma typed back. "It's in motion." May's reply came seconds later. "About time that house remembered who built it." Norma smiled faintly and slipped the last envelope into her purse. Outside, she could hear the faint murmur of voices below. Ray's frustration rising. Derek's softer replies. The sound didn't rattle her anymore. She stood, moved to the window, and looked down at the street. The magnolias were blooming again, heavy with white petals and rain. She could almost feel her husband's hand at her back, steadying her the way he used to when she had to do something difficult but necessary. For the first time in months, the reflection that looked back at her didn't seem small or tired. It looked ready. Later that night, a faint knock came at her door. Derek stood there, hands in his pockets, eyes uncertain. Grandma? Yes, sweetheart. He hesitated. Dad asked if you'd maybe help out, just for a bit. Norma turned from her desk, her face unreadable but not unkind. Money's being repurposed, she said evenly. That's the best help I can offer right now. He nodded slowly, unsure what it meant but wise enough not to press. As he turned to leave, Norma called softly after him. Derek? He looked back. You remember this. Sometimes the only way to fix what's broken is to stop letting the wrong people hold the tools. He gave a small nod. I think I understand. I know you do, she said. When he was gone, Norma closed the door, locked it, and exhaled. The papers on her desk were neatly stacked, the checkbook beside them. Outside, the wind picked up again, rustling the magnolia leaves like whispers against glass. Somewhere in the dark, the house creaked. Not with age, but with change. Charleston's air was thick with spring salt and magnolia bloom when Norma stepped back into Rowe & Sons that Friday morning. Gareth Rowe looked up from the counter, recognizing the look in her eyes before she said a word, a calm kind of resolve that meant the decision had already been made. Mr. Rowe, she said, setting her purse down. You mentioned you sometimes know people who need quick sales. He straightened, pulling off his glasses. I might. Depends on what you're looking for. Something small, she said. Close to home. Solid bones. Quiet. He studied her a moment, as though weighing what kind of woman buys property on instinct alone. Then he nodded and opened a drawer behind the counter. You're in luck. Friend of mine's in a hurry. Small craftsman 2 blocks off Broad. Widow, moving to Atlanta. Needs it gone within the week. Norma's lips curved faintly. 2 blocks away? Walking distance, Gareth confirmed. Wouldn't take more than an afternoon to move your things. Perfect, she said. He blinked, half amused. You haven't even seen it. I don't need to, Norma said. I trust your eye. That earned a genuine smile. Then I'll make a call. By noon, she was standing in front of the little house, a weathered blue Craftsman with white trim and a porch swing that creaked softly in the breeze. The azaleas along the walkway were overgrown, but the yard had the kind of quiet that money couldn't fake. May leaned on her cane beside her, squinting through the afternoon glare. Well, she's not much, but she's got charm, she said. Reminds me of you before you stopped letting people tell you what you couldn't afford. Norma smiled faintly. That's exactly what I was thinking. Inside, the air smelled faintly of cedar and lemon oil. Sunlight slid through tall windows onto old hardwood floors that creaked in greeting. No grandeur, just space that felt like it had waited patiently for her. May tapped the doorframe. So, what's the plan? Norma reached into her purse and pulled out the manila envelope Jude had prepared. Buy it outright, under a trust name, quietly. May's eyebrows shot up. Oh, honey, you really are done asking permission. I was done the minute she forged my name, Norma said softly. By the end of the day, the papers were signed, notarized, and filed. Blake Heritage Trust, a name Jude had suggested, now owned the modest blue house 2 blocks from the one Angela claimed as hers. The funds transferred cleanly from Norma's account, leaving behind only a whisper of the jewelry's worth. When she handed Jude the final document, he gave a small nod of approval. You did it. You're officially your own landlord now. Norma smiled, that calm, unflinching smile that unnerved most people. No, she said. I'm just reclaiming the ground I should have never had to share. Over the next few evenings, Norma moved quietly. She and May made several evening trips, carrying boxes that looked too light to matter and 1 or 2 that didn't. The neighborhood was used to seeing May's Lincoln parked out front, so no one paid attention. A framed photograph of her late husband went first, then the silver hairbrush set, then the envelope drawer by drawer, like she was unburdening herself one heartbeat at a time. May grunted as she lifted a box from the back seat. "You think your daughter's noticed?" "Not yet," Norma said, closing the trunk. "She's too busy keeping up appearances to look down the hall." By the fourth night, Derek did notice. He stood in the doorway of his grandmother's room, staring at the half-empty dresser, the missing photo frames, the bed stripped down to its linen bones. "Grandma?" he called softly, but she was out. Only the faint smell of lavender and polish lingered. He frowned, uneasy. Downstairs, Angela was in the kitchen, scrolling through her phone with a glass of wine. "Mom," he said, "have you seen Grandma's room lately?" Angela didn't look up. "Why?" "It's emptying out." She laughed under her breath. "Finally. Maybe she's decluttering. About time she let go of all that junk." "Doesn't look like decluttering," Derek muttered. "Looks like moving." Angela's thumb paused mid-scroll. "Don't be ridiculous. Where would she go?" He shrugged, but his gut told him she wasn't asking out of concern. The next afternoon, Norma sat again across from Jude in his office, calm as a lake before a storm. "I wanted you to know," Jude said, sliding a folder toward her. "I've filed the official challenge to the deed transfer on your primary residence. The clerk's already flagged it for investigation. Your daughter will be notified by mail within the week." Norma's gaze didn't waver. "And that means?" "It means she's about to learn there's a difference between living in a house and owning one." Norma closed the folder and smiled. Slow, sure, dangerous. "Good. Let her check the mailbox." As she rose to leave, the late afternoon light spilled through the window, gold and sharp, catching the edge of the file like a blade. That evening, Angela stood by the kitchen window, opening the day's mail while Ray flipped channels on the couch. Her voice cut through the hum of the TV. "What's this?" she said, frowning at the letterhead. "County Recorder's Office?" Ray barely looked up. "Probably taxes." Angela tore the envelope open. Her face went pale. "It's a notice. About an investigation. Into our refinance." Ray sat up. "What kind of investigation?" She swallowed, eyes scanning the page. "Fraud," she whispered. From the porch, unseen, Norma listened just long enough to hear the word echo through the house she no longer truly lived in. Then she smiled, small, private, certain, and turned toward the street where her new porch light was already burning. The letter from the county clerk didn't just land, it detonated. By Monday morning, the hum of panic had replaced the sound of breakfast in Angela's kitchen. Ray sat at the table, elbows buried in papers he didn't fully understand, the color drained from his face. His coffee went untouched. The letterhead, Charleston County Recorder's Office, lay open like an accusation between them. "They're saying they're investigating the refinance," Angela snapped, pacing. "You said it was all legit." Ray's jaw clenched. "It was. The broker handled everything. I just signed what she gave me." "You mean what Mom never signed." Angela slammed the counter with her palm. "This is her. She's doing this to get back at me." Ray rubbed his temples. "Angela, this isn't about revenge. They're saying the documents were forged. That's a felony." Her voice rose, sharp as glass. "Oh, stop acting like you're innocent in this. You used the equity, didn't you? That equipment money. You never paid it off." Ray's silence was enough of an answer. Angela froze. "You didn't?" "I was going to," he barked, "but the job's dried up. I thought I could flip the tools. Pay it down, but—" She cut him off, eyes wide with disbelief. "You used her house as collateral for equipment you don't even have anymore? I didn't know it was going to blow up like this." Ray's voice cracked under the weight of his own regret. Angela sank into a chair, her hand over her mouth. "We're screwed." Outside, the mail truck hummed past. Neither of them moved. That same morning, across town, Norma sat in Jude Moreno's office again, hands wrapped around a cup of black coffee. The blinds were half closed, the morning light slicing across the wood desk. Jude spoke quietly, flipping through a fresh set of documents. The county clerk opened the inquiry officially. They're reviewing the refinance records, notary stamps, and loan disbursements. I've also sent a cease and desist notice. Your daughter and son-in-law can't move or refinance any assets until the investigation closes. Norma nodded. Good. They've moved enough. He looked up at her over his glasses. I have to say, you've got steel in you, Mrs. Blake. Most people crumble when the county starts sniffing around. Norma took a slow sip. I was married to a man who rebuilt teeth for 40 years. He taught me what patience looks like. Jude smiled faintly. Patience and precision, two things lawyers and dental hygienists have in common. She set the cup down, her tone soft but steady. So, what happens next? They'll contact all parties for verification. If the signatures don't match, and they won't, the mortgage company will freeze the account. That buys you time. How much? Enough, he said. Norma stood, tucking her purse under her arm. Then let's use it. By late afternoon, word had spread faster than the humidity. Angela was on the phone, voice rising. Yes, I'm aware of the notice. No, we didn't commit fraud. It's my mother. She's confused. She's making trouble. Ray paced behind her, phone in hand, calling the lender. No, I can't send payment until I know what's going on. He stopped mid-sentence, listening, then went pale. What do you mean, account frozen? Angela spun around. What? Ray hung up. They froze the loan. We can't touch it. Angela's breath came fast. She's killing us, Ray. She's protecting herself, he muttered. Angela shot him a look that could have split stone. You're taking her side now? Ray didn't answer. He was already thinking about what he'd done. The missing receipts, the unpaid invoices. He'd gambled on silence, and Norma had just flipped the table. That evening, Derek pulled his old pickup into the driveway, headlights catching the storm shutters of the house that no longer felt like home. He noticed his grandmother's car was gone again. He found her 2 blocks over, standing on the porch of the small blue Craftsman, her new porch light glowing in the dusk. She was wearing her gardening gloves, sleeves rolled up, a woman entirely at peace. Grandma, he called, stepping closer. You moved. Not officially, she said, smiling. Just transitioning. He looked through the open door. Boxes stacked neatly along the wall, the smell of lemon oil and cedar. Familiar, but new. You need help with anything? He asked. She handed him a box marked books, keepers. If you don't mind carrying the past. He smiled faintly. Took the box. Dad's losing it, by the way. He said they froze the loan. Norma brushed off her hands, voice calm as dusk. I imagine they did. He says you're making things worse. She looked at him, the kind of look that saw straight through the noise. Sometimes worse is the only road to better. Derek didn't quite understand, but he nodded anyway. Where should I put this? In the front room, she said. Under the window. The light's good there. As he walked inside, she lingered on the porch, looking toward the direction of her old home, the faint outline just visible through the trees. For the first time, it didn't look like hers anymore. And that, she thought, was exactly how it should be. The next morning, a county investigator's car pulled into Angela's driveway. The knock came hard. Official. Angela opened the door with a forced smile that trembled at the corners. Can I help you? The investigator flipped open a badge. Charleston County Recorder's Office. We're following up on the refinance of this property. Ray appeared behind her, pale and sweating. Angela forced a laugh. Oh, of course. It's all just a misunderstanding. My mother's confused. The investigator looked down at his clipboard. We'll see. We'll need statements from both you and Mrs. Norma Blake. Angela's hand gripped the doorframe. You mean she's part of this? Yes, ma'am, she filed the challenge. Ray exhaled sharply. Angela went still, her face draining of color. From her porch 2 blocks away, Norma watched the county car through the branches, the siren light glinting faintly in the morning sun. She didn't smile this time. She didn't need to. She just whispered to herself, about time. By Wednesday, Charleston's humidity was thick enough to press the truth out of anyone who still tried to hide it. Angela wasn't hiding. She was broadcasting. Her phone screen glowed in the kitchen as she recorded another video, face flushed, hair unbrushed, voice edged with fury. I don't care who sees this, she said into the camera. My own mother has turned against me. She's trying to steal my house, our home, and she's lying to the county to do it. Family sabotage, plain and simple. Ray stood by the sink, rubbing the back of his neck, watching her rant spiral. Angie, maybe don't put this online. She rounded on him. Oh, what? I'm just supposed to let everyone believe I'm some kind of criminal? You're making us look worse, he muttered. I'm setting the record straight, she snapped. Everyone's gonna know what she did. Ray opened his mouth to argue, but his phone buzzed before he could. He glanced at the screen, and the color drained from his face. God, he whispered. Angela frowned. What now? He handed her the phone. My business account. It's frozen. Angela blinked. Frozen? Why? Compliance hold, they said. Investigation pending. His voice cracked. Everything's gone. Payroll, deposits, equipment payments. Everything. Angela's expression twisted between shock and rage. This is her again. She's behind all of it. Ray dropped into a chair, hands over his face. You don't get it. The county sent notices to the bank. The fraud investigation triggered automatic reviews. They probably think I'm laundering money through the business. Angela stared at him. So, what do we do? He didn't look up. Hope the truth shows up before the foreclosure letter does. Across town, the air in Norma's blue house was cool and quiet. She had the windows open, letting in the faint sound of rain tapping against the porch. May sat at the kitchen table, flipping through the local paper and chuckling under her breath. Your daughter's gone full spectacle, she said. She's on that neighborhood Facebook group talking about elder abuse. Half of Charleston probably knows your business now. Norma poured tea, unbothered. Let them talk. People who scream first are usually the ones who feel the walls closing in. May laughed. Well, the walls sure sound loud from here. A knock came at the door. 2 soft taps. Hesitant. May raised an eyebrow. Speak of the devil or the next best thing. Norma wiped her hands on a towel and went to the door. Derek stood there, hair damp from the drizzle, hands jammed into his jacket pockets. He looked older than he had a week ago. Maybe from guilt. Maybe from growing up too fast. Hey, Grandma, he said quietly. Hey, sweetheart. She stepped aside. Come in before you soak through. He nodded, eyes flicking around the small but warm kitchen. It's nice here. Simple, Norma said. I like simple. He sat at the table, shoulders heavy. Mom's losing it. Dad, too. I know you're not going to tell me everything, but... He hesitated. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. For not speaking up sooner. For letting them talk to you like that. May's voice piped in from behind her paper. Told you that boy had a conscience. Derek gave a shy smile. Guess it showed up late. Norma set a mug in front of him. Better late than never. He glanced at her keys on the counter. 3 silver, 1 gold, looped neatly on a leather ring. Are those new? Norma picked them up, letting them jingle softly in her palm. They open doors that no one else gets to close again. Derek frowned slightly, then smiled. So, you really bought a house? Norma nodded. A home, actually. There's a difference. He leaned back, quiet for a moment. Mom's gonna lose her mind when she finds out. She already has, May muttered. Norma chuckled, setting the keys down. Then I suppose I don't have much to lose. Later that night, Derek drove back home through a steady rain. When he walked inside, Angela was still glued to her phone, refreshing her feed, her face pale in the blue light. "Where were you?" she asked sharply. "Nowhere," he said. "Just needed some air." Ray sat silent at the table, bills spread out like open wounds. Angela's voice broke the stillness. "She's behind everything, Derek. Don't forget that." He looked at her, really looked, and for the first time, he didn't see his mother. He saw someone cornered. "I think Grandma's just finally standing up," he said quietly. Angela's mouth fell open. "Excuse me?" But Derek was already walking upstairs. Across town, in her blue house, Norma stood at her window, listening to the rain. The streetlight cast her reflection in the glass, soft but unyielding. Her phone buzzed. A message from Jude. "The county's moving fast. Expect a response hearing soon." Norma read it twice, then set the phone down. She reached for her keys and turned them in her hand. 3 silver, 1 gold. "Let them find out what owning really means," she murmured. Outside, the rain thickened, washing the night clean. The courtroom smelled faintly of lemon oil and nerves. A ceiling fan hummed above, its slow spin barely cutting the Charleston humidity that clung to every corner. Norma Blake sat at the plaintiff's table, hands folded neatly atop a thin file. She wore a pale gray suit, pressed, simple, immaculate. Her calmness made the bailiff glance twice, as if expecting her to be someone else. Jude Moreno stood beside her, sharp as always, his notes stacked with surgical precision. Across the aisle, Angela and Ray whispered furiously, paper rustling, eyes darting toward the door every time it creaked. Angela's lipstick was too bright, her perfume too strong. A woman dressing in armor she didn't believe in anymore. The judge, a woman in her 60s with silver hair pinned back in an efficient twist, settled into her seat. "Charleston County Recorder's Office versus Angela Blake and Raymond Blake," she read aloud. "Claim of property fraud and falsified documentation. We'll begin with statements." Angela shot to her feet first, voice trembling with urgency. "Your Honor, this is all a misunderstanding. My mother, she told us we could handle the paperwork. She said—" The judge lifted a hand. "Mrs. Blake, you'll have your turn to clarify. Mr. Moreno?" Jude stepped forward, calm and deliberate. "Your Honor, my client never consented to a refinance of her property. The signatures on the documents filed last March are fraudulent. We've submitted notarized handwriting comparisons and the original title documents from 1989. He handed the clerk a folder, then turned back to the bench. "The defense claims she authorized them verbally, but verbal consent doesn't forge a legal signature." The judge nodded slowly. "Proceed." Jude clicked a small remote. On the screen behind him appeared 2 sets of signatures, one crisp and elegant, the other a little too confident, a little too rehearsed. He pointed to the lower signature. "This is Mrs. Blake's verified signature, notarized on several estate documents over the past 30 years. He shifted to the next image. "And this, filed by her daughter, is an imitation." Notice the curvature of the N, the inconsistent pressure points. Even the county notary stamp is invalid. The registered number belongs to a notary who died in 2017. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Angela's face paled. "She said I could," she blurted, standing again. "She said she trusted me to handle it." The judge fixed her with a look that froze her mid-sentence. "Mrs. Blake, sit down." Angela's chair scraped the floor as she obeyed. Norma didn't move, didn't speak. She simply met her daughter's eyes across the aisle, a look not of anger, but of acknowledgement. The kind a mother gives when she finally accepts that some lessons only come with consequence. Ray shifted beside Angela, voice low but audible. We didn't mean to hurt her. We just needed the money. Jude adjusted his tie. Need does not erase fraud, Mr. Blake. The judge leaned back in her chair, scanning the documents once more. Given the evidence, the court will issue a temporary hold on the title until the investigation concludes. During that time, no sale, refinance, or equity draw may occur. The property is effectively frozen. Angela's voice broke. You can't just... I can, the judge interrupted. And I will. Mrs. Blake, you'll receive written notice of the order within 48 hours. Angela sat down hard, eyes wide, a soundless gasp caught between shock and defeat. Norma exhaled softly, more relief than triumph. Jude gathered the documents, placed them back into his folder, and gave her a brief nod. You did well, he murmured. I didn't say a word, Norma said. That's what made it effective, he replied. Outside the courthouse, the air shimmered with heat. Reporters weren't waiting. This wasn't the kind of story that made headlines, just the kind that changed a family's weather forever. Norma stepped into the sunlight, eyes half-lidded against the glare. The sound of palm fronds brushing against the courthouse steps reminded her of ocean waves, steady, cleansing. May waited by her car, engine running, sunglasses perched on her nose. Well, how'd it go? Judge froze the house, Norma said simply, sliding into the passenger seat. May whistled. That'll tighten some throats. Norma smiled faintly. I imagine so. As they pulled into traffic, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Gareth Rowe. Market shift this week. Your new home just appreciated $12,000. Congratulations. May caught the faint smirk that flickered across Norma's face. Good news? Better than that, Norma said, tucking the phone into her purse. It's balance. They drove in silence for a while, the road curving through the historic district where the magnolias hung heavy with bloom. Charleston's air was thick, alive, and for the first time in months, it didn't feel like it was pressing down. It felt like it was lifting. That evening, Angela sat alone in the half-dark kitchen. Ray had gone out. Maybe for air, maybe for good. The house was too quiet. On the counter lay the judge's order, half crumpled from her fist. Her phone buzzed again with comments from strangers, half pity, half curiosity. She swiped them away and looked toward the staircase where her mother's old room still stood empty. Her reflection caught in the dark window. For the first time, she couldn't tell if she looked like the victim or the thief. Across town, Norma placed her new keys on the kitchen counter, next to her late husband's photograph. The gold one gleamed brightest under the lamplight. She whispered, almost to herself, "It's starting." And outside, as thunder rolled low across the harbor, the porch light flickered once, then steadied. The courthouse felt colder this time, as though the air itself had grown wary of everyone inside it. Even the fluorescent lights hummed differently, less mechanical, more watchful. Norma sat where she always had, posture perfect, a soft cardigan over her gray dress. She didn't need armor anymore. She'd already outlasted the battle. Jude stood beside her, his usual poise sharpened to something almost surgical. Across the aisle, Angela looked like she hadn't slept in days. Her mascara smudged faintly beneath her eyes, her blouse creased. Ray sat beside her, defeated, thumbing at his wedding ring like it might offer him a way out. The judge entered. Same efficient grace, same no-nonsense tone. Let's make this quick, she said. Charleston County Recorder's Office. Continuation of case number 4-381. We have the clerk's verification results and the lending institution's audit report. Mr. Moreno? Jude rose, voice calm, unhurried. Your Honor, the The findings confirm what we presented at the preliminary hearing. Mrs. Blake's signatures on the refinancing documents were forged. The notary registration was invalid, and the loan disbursements were used for personal business unrelated to the property. The judge flipped through her notes, eyes narrowing. And the bank has confirmed that the proceeds were wired to an account in Mr. Raymond Blake's name. Ray exhaled, shoulders sagging. Angela's whisper hissed across the table. You said they'd never trace it. The judge's gavel tapped once. Enough. This isn't a family squabble, it's a matter of law. Norma didn't flinch. She hadn't all morning. She just watched the proceedings unfold as if she were finally seeing truth make its slow, deliberate way across the floor. The judge folded her hands. Given the evidence, I am restoring Mrs. Norma Blake's 50% ownership of the property effective immediately. Any future sale, refinance, or lien requires her written consent. Angela's mouth fell open. You can't. I can, the judge said again, tone clipped. Furthermore, Mrs. Angela Blake is prohibited from refinancing or taking new property loans for a period of 7 years. Mr. Raymond Blake, you are hereby referred for a financial review under county fraud compliance. Ray's head dropped into his hands. Angela stared straight ahead, frozen. Jude nodded respectfully. Thank you, Your Honor. The gavel came down once, sharp, decisive, echoing through the courtroom like the closing of a vault. Outside, Charleston's air was sweet again, the heavy scent of rain replaced by the dry warmth of early summer. May waited by the car with a paper bag of pastries. Well? She asked. Norma opened the passenger door, sliding in with quiet grace. 50% mine again. May handed her a croissant like it was a medal. 50%? Sounds like 100% peace of mind. Norma smiled, just barely. It's enough. They drove in silence for a few minutes, the city gliding past in watercolor motion, the old iron gates, the Spanish moss hanging low over cobblestone streets, the hum of life carrying on. Finally, May glanced at her. You ready to walk away? Norma looked out the window, her reflection faint in the glass. I've already walked? May grinned, satisfied. Knew it. Later that afternoon, Jude met Norma at her new house. He brought papers, as always, and his tone carried that rare mix of business and respect, reserved for people who've earned both. I've drawn up a quiet listing agreement, he said. Strict confidentiality. Only vetted buyers. Norma raised an eyebrow. I'm not sure I want to sell. Maybe not now, Jude said. But the market's changing. It's good to have options. Freedom comes easier when there's a number attached to it. She studied the paper, then set it down without signing. I'll think about it. He nodded, understanding. Just keep me posted. I'll make sure Gareth has a copy of the appraised value. As he left, the afternoon sun slanted through the porch windows, landing squarely on the framed photo of her and her late husband. He looked forever mid-laugh, tie crooked, as if reminding her that good choices never came from fear. That evening, May joined her on the porch. The two women sat with iced tea, watching the sky dim to a bruised violet. You know, May said, when I was your age, I'd have given anything to see my enemies choke on their own paperwork. Norma laughed softly. You still might. May sipped her tea, satisfied. So what now? Norma leaned back in her chair, eyes fixed on the street beyond the azaleas. Now I wait. For what? The right kind of ending. The next morning, Jude's text arrived at dawn. Offer came in overnight, full price, cash, no contingencies. Norma read it twice, then again. She set the phone down slowly, heart steady but not still. Through the open window, Charleston was waking, seagulls crying above the rooftops, a church bell marking 7 o'clock, the faint scent of salt drifting inland. She looked toward her porch light, the same one that had burned steady through every storm. Anonymous buyer, Jude's message had said. She smiled faintly. No such thing. The gold key glinted on her counter, catching the sunrise. The morning light came soft and golden, sliding across the oak floors of Norma's blue house, the one she now owned without apology. Cardboard boxes lined the living room like patient soldiers, each labeled in her neat cursive: kitchenware, books, records, keepsakes. Nothing frantic, nothing left behind. She stood in the doorway, surveying the stacks, her hands resting lightly on the back of a dining chair. The house was quiet except for the steady tick of a wall clock and the distant coo of a mourning dove. Every sound felt like punctuation, every breath a line drawn beneath a chapter. The rumble of a pickup engine broke the stillness. Derek's truck pulled into the driveway, tailgate down, bed empty and ready. He climbed out in a t-shirt and jeans, still half asleep, but smiling. "Morning, Grandma," he said, wiping a hand across his brow. "You sure about doing this yourself? I could have called some guys from work." Norma shook her head. "I trust my own hands better than strangers. Besides, this isn't much of a move." He grinned. 2 blocks isn't much. Yeah. Inside, they worked quietly. Derek lifted the heavier boxes, setting them into the truck with care. Norma handled the smaller things: photographs, framed certificates, the stack of old vinyl records her husband used to play on Sundays. By noon, the rooms were mostly bare. Dust outlines marked where furniture had sat for years. Norma paused in the doorway of what used to be her bedroom, fingers grazing the indentations in the carpet. "You okay?" Derek asked from the hall. She nodded. "Places remember the people who love them, but sometimes you have to leave before they forget." He didn't fully understand it, but he respected the tone. They loaded the last box. Her jewelry chest, empty now but still carrying its own quiet weight. Derek shut the tailgate gently. "Last trip," he said. Norma looked up at the house. The porch light was still on, even in daylight, casting its faithful glow. "Leave it burning," she murmured. "Let it know it's forgiven." The truck crawled slowly down the narrow Charleston street, magnolia blossoms scattering across the hood like confetti. When they reached the Blue Craftsman 2 blocks away, the movers Gareth had sent were already there, unloading a small rented van. He stood on the walkway, sleeves rolled up, clipboard in hand. "Everything ready for transfer, Mrs. Blake?" he said. "I wired the funds this morning. Your account's fully funded. Sale completed. Trust secured." Norma smiled. "And the buyer?" "Still anonymous," Gareth said, a faint glimmer in his eye. "But cash cleared without question." May, leaning against her cane beside the porch, grinned. "Anonymous, my foot. Probably someone who knows quality when they see it." Norma chuckled. "Or someone who knows a woman who doesn't bluff." By late afternoon, most of her belongings were inside. Derek assembled the bookshelf near the front window. May unpacked a box of china, complaining about the modern way people wrapped dishes. Norma stepped out onto the porch, the wood warm under her feet. She leaned against the railing, watching the street curve toward the home she used to share with her daughter. The air was sweet with wisteria and salt. Then she heard it, the low purr of a familiar engine. Angela's SUV rolled slowly past, window down, Ray in the passenger seat looking hollowed out. Angela's gaze flicked toward the moving truck, the boxes, the new address on the mailbox. Blake Heritage Trust. Her jaw tightened. Norma caught her daughter's eye and smiled, not smugly, but serenely, the kind of smile that doesn't need words to explain itself. Angela didn't wave. She drove on, the car disappearing around the corner, brake lights flashing once like an unspoken goodbye. Inside, Derek wiped his hands on a rag. "That's it, Grandma. All done." Norma handed him a glass of lemonade, her favorite pitcher between them. "You've been good to me, Derek. You know that?" He smiled. Guess it runs in the family. May raised her glass from the kitchen. To fresh starts and sharper boundaries. They laughed. Soft, genuine, and free of weight. The screen door creaked open as Gareth stepped back inside holding an envelope. Courier just dropped this at your old address, so I brought it along. Looks official. Norma accepted it, eyes narrowing slightly. She unfolded the paper, reading silently. Then she smiled, a deep, quiet smile that reached her eyes. 3 days' notice, she said softly. Derek frowned. For what? She met his gaze, the satisfaction in her tone like velvet over steel. For them to vacate. The sun was setting now, painting the street in gold and rust. From her porch, Norma could see the old house in the distance, the one her daughter still thought was hers, bathed in that same fading light. It looked smaller now. Norma turned back inside, locking the door behind her. The sound clicked sharp and certain, sealing a new beginning. Across town, Angela stood in her kitchen, the eviction notice shaking slightly in her hand. 3 days, she whispered. Ray stared at it, unblinking. Where do we go? Angela didn't answer. For once, she didn't have anything to say. That night, in the blue house, Norma stood by her window, watching the porch light glow steady. She whispered to no one in particular. Some debts are better repaid with distance. Her phone buzzed. A text from Jude. Funds received. Deed confirmed. Trust active. She placed the phone down and looked at her keys, the same gold one catching the last trace of sunlight. The morning after the eviction notice, Charleston's air was deceptively calm. Bright sun, soft wind, and the smell of honeysuckle drifting through open windows. But calm, Norma thought, was often just the quiet between storms. She sat at her kitchen table, a cup of black coffee steaming beside a small pile of neatly stacked documents, loan records, payment histories, evidence of debts Ray had hoped would stay buried. She'd received them weeks ago, courtesy of Jude, who had friends in the county finance office. Now she addressed a plain envelope in her careful cursive. No return name, no flourish. Just a quiet delivery of truth to a creditor who had waited long enough. When she sealed it, she pressed the flap flat with her palm. Debts don't disappear, she murmured. They just wait for someone honest enough to send the bill. May poked her head through the open door, sunglasses perched on her head. You talking to yourself again? Or to karma? Norma smiled faintly. Both. Maybe. May stepped inside, plopping her purse on the counter. You ready for today? We've got half your jewelry collection to sort before the shelter's pickup truck comes. Ready, Norma said. Everything that mattered's already done. By mid-morning, the dining room table gleamed beneath the soft light. Velvet boxes were open in neat rows. Rings, brooches, necklaces, each tagged and labeled for donation. Pieces once tucked away in shadows now sparkled openly, as if glad to be seen again. May handled a pearl bracelet, shaking her head. You sure you don't want to keep this one? It's got your kind of dignity. Norma looked at it, thoughtful. That one belonged to my mother. She gave it to me to wear, not to hoard. Maybe someone else needs that reminder now. May smiled. You're dangerous when you start sounding poetic. I'm peaceful when I start sounding done, Norma said. They boxed the jewelry with care, layer after layer of tissue paper until the table sat empty once more. Across town, the morning peace fractured. A tow truck rumbled into Angela's driveway, gears grinding. Ray ran out barefoot, shouting, Hey, hey, what the hell are you doing? The driver, all business, handed him a clipboard. Order from the finance company. Loan default. We've been trying to reach you. That's impossible. I just paid last month. Ray snapped, flipping through the notice. His voice faltered as his eyes hit the total. What is this? The man shrugged. Looks like a full recall. Someone sent over the original loan docs. Said your account was under audit. Angela appeared in the doorway, robe tied tight, panic sharpening her tone. You can't take it. He needs that truck for work. Ma'am, the driver said calmly. This isn't personal, it's business. The metal hook clanged onto the hitch. Moments later, the truck was gone, rolling down the street like the last piece of luck leaving their lives. Angela turned to Ray, voice breaking. What did you do? He didn't answer. He didn't have to. Back in the blue house, May was scribbling on a clipboard as the women's shelter volunteer packed the last of the boxes into a van. You're giving away a small fortune, the volunteer said. Are you sure? Norma nodded. It was never about the money, it was about the weight. As the van pulled away, the sunlight caught the side of the box marked Legacy Collection. The word donation, written in May's looping script, gleamed like a promise. Clean slate, May said, dusting her hands. Norma smiled. And clean conscience. By late afternoon, Gareth arrived with his usual quiet knock. He carried a narrow envelope and a tired smile. Final installment from the trust fund's residual interest, he said. Your accounts are officially closed. No liens, no pending transfers, no hidden hooks. It's all yours, clean. He placed the check on the table, sliding it toward her like a magician finishing a trick. And, he added, your daughter's property appeal was denied. Permanently. Norma nodded, serene. Good. The court already gave her more mercy than she ever offered me. Gareth studied her for a moment, then grinned. You know, Mrs. Blake, in all my years of appraising things, I've never seen value so poetic. She chuckled. Poetic doesn't pay bills. No, he said, but it buys peace. He tipped his hat and left her to her quiet. That evening, the phone rang once, and then went dead. May looked up from the couch. Your line acting up? Norma checked her cell, still working fine. Not mine. Across town, Angela stood in her kitchen, holding her cell to her ear. Hello? Hello? Silence. She checked the screen, service suspended for non-payment. Her eyes flicked to the eviction notice still pinned to the fridge. Of course, she whispered. The lights flickered once, then went out. At the same time, Jude sent a short message to Norma. Title confirmed. Deed perfected. County file closed. Congratulations, Mrs. Blake. Norma read it once, then set the phone down beside her glass of tea. Through the window, the porch light of the blue house glowed steady in the dusk, unflickering, unwavering. May stretched, smiling. So, now what? You've got your peace, your property, and your pound of flesh. Norma leaned back in her chair, eyes on the horizon where the sea air shimmered faintly. Now, she said softly, I wait to see who can live without debt. The wind off the harbor carried the faintest chill that morning, hinting at autumn even as the magnolias refused to let summer go. Norma was trimming her hydrangeas when she heard a slow crunch of tires on gravel. Derek's old pickup pulled into her driveway, idling there for a moment like it wasn't sure it belonged. He stepped out, hands shoved deep in his jacket pockets, his eyes shadowed but determined. The same boy she'd once watched chase lightning bugs on this street. Older now. Heavier with knowledge he hadn't wanted to earn. Grandma? He said softly. Norma set down her pruning shears, brushing the soil from her gloves. You look like someone carrying too much in his chest. He swallowed hard. I came to say I'm sorry. For what? She asked gently, though she already knew. For everything? For not standing up for you. For staying quiet when I knew they were wrong. I told myself it wasn't my fight. But it was. His voice cracked halfway through. And he looked away quickly, blinking fast. You didn't deserve any of it. Norma studied him for a moment, her expression unreadable. Then she stepped closer and took off her gloves. "You still can stand up," she said simply. "You just have to decide who you're standing with." Derek frowned. "You mean you'd even want me to?" "I never stopped," she said. "I just needed you to find your own courage before you tried to borrow mine." His shoulders trembled, and this time he didn't hide it. "I don't know how to fix what they broke." Norma tilted her head, her tone soft but firm. "You fix yourself first. The rest will learn to follow." He exhaled, long and shaky, and nodded. "Come inside," she said, motioning toward the porch. "You can't apologize properly on an empty stomach." The kitchen smelled like cinnamon and fresh bread. May was at the counter, wiping down a pie dish. She looked up, eyebrows arched. "Well, if it isn't the prodigal grandson, you here to repent or to eat?" Derek gave a half smile. "Maybe both." "Good," May said. "We've got room for both kinds." Norma poured him coffee, black like her own, and sat across from him. The silence between them wasn't heavy anymore, just honest. "I've been saving," Derek said after a moment. "For my HVAC certification. I was supposed to take the final module this month, but I don't have enough to cover it. Dad's truck being gone. Everything's just—" Norma raised a hand gently, stopping him. "You don't have to explain their choices." He nodded, embarrassed. I want to do something right. Something that lasts." Norma reached into the drawer beside her chair and pulled out a small envelope. Nothing flashy, just folded cleanly, her handwriting steady across the front. "For Derek." She slid it across the table. "This isn't charity. It's an investment." He stared at it, unmoving. "I can't take that." "Yes, you can," she said. "You think I spent 70 years saving so your mother could squander it? No. I saved it for whoever remembered where decency starts." He hesitated only a second longer before taking it, fingers trembling. "Grandma, I don't know what to say." "Then don't," she said softly. He pushed his chair back and stood suddenly, as if the air in the room had become too small for the weight in him. For a second, he looked like the boy who used to run into her arms after thunderstorms. Then he did exactly that, stepping forward and hugging her tight, harder than she expected. It wasn't awkward. It wasn't planned. It was years of silence giving way to something real. Norma closed her eyes, one hand resting gently against his back. "You're still my favorite," she whispered. He laughed through the crack in his voice. "I'm your only." "Then I'm never wrong," she replied. From the porch, May sniffled and wiped her eyes with a paper napkin. "I swear, if I'd known there'd be tears, I'd have brought champagne instead." Derek turned, grinning faintly. "Sorry, Miss May." She waved him off. "Don't you Miss May me. Go get certified and make your grandmother proud before I start hugging people too." He nodded and left soon after, the sound of his truck fading into the slow hum of the neighborhood. Late afternoon painted the porch in honey-colored light. Gareth Rowe appeared at the gate, holding a small velvet box. "Afternoon, Mrs. Blake. Thought you might appreciate a token to mark the end of an era." Norma raised an eyebrow. "Please tell me that isn't another appraisal form." He chuckled. "No paperwork this time." He opened the box to reveal a vintage brooch, an Art Deco piece with a sapphire at its center, the metal filigree gleaming in the fading sun. "I found it at an estate sale," he said. "Reminded me of that pendant you sold. Thought you deserved something new, something that's yours again." Norma took it carefully, her fingers tracing the edges. "It's beautiful," she murmured. "Strong lines, rare stone, perfect symmetry," Gareth said. "Like its owner." May smirked from the porch chair. "You trying to flirt with a woman who just outsmarted half of Charleston's real estate scene?" Gareth smiled, unbothered. Wouldn't be the first bad bet I've made. Norma pinned the brooch to her cardigan, the gem catching the last glint of light. Then maybe this one will pay off, she said, her tone soft but certain. As dusk fell, she sat between May and Gareth on the porch, the horizon painted in amber and slate. The city breathed around them, alive, unhurried, forgiven. May leaned back, sighing contentedly. Feels like peace, Norma smiled faintly. No, she said, gazing toward the darkening street. Feels like something coming next. The cafe on Meeting Street was the kind of place where the china didn't match, and the walls smelled faintly of roasted beans and rain. Norma chose it deliberately. Neutral ground, public enough to keep tempers in check, quiet enough to hear the truth if it dared to show up. She arrived 10 minutes early, as always, and ordered plain coffee. No cream, no sugar. The barista brought it in a chipped porcelain cup that looked like it had survived its share of storms. Fitting, Norma thought. So had she. Outside the window, Charleston pulsed softly in late afternoon gold. People hurried home, tourists lingered near the market, and the church bells marked 4 o'clock with the gentle certainty of time, doing what people so often failed to: move on. The door opened with a familiar jingle. Angela stood in the entrance, shoulders slumped beneath an oversized sweater, her hair pulled back hastily. There was no armor left in her. Just fatigue and something raw behind her eyes. She spotted her mother and hesitated. Norma didn't wave her over, just looked up, calm, expectant. Angela approached slowly, like someone walking toward a confession booth. "Mom," she said quietly, sliding into the seat across from her. Norma nodded. "Angela." For a long moment neither spoke. The hum of the espresso machine filled the silence. Finally, Angela exhaled hard, hands trembling slightly. "You destroyed everything." Norma's gaze didn't waver. She lifted her cup, took a slow sip, and set it down with measured care. "No," she said softly. "I reclaimed it." Angela blinked, caught off guard by the simplicity of the reply. "You ruined my life. Ray's gone. Derek barely talks to me. I can't get a loan, can't rent without someone co-signing. Do you even know what that feels like?" Norma tilted her head slightly. "I imagine it feels like being powerless, like having something you thought you owned taken out from under you." Angela's voice cracked. "You could have just talked to me instead of dragging me through court." "I tried talking," Norma said, her tone even but not cold. "You weren't listening." Angela rubbed her temples, shaking her head. "I was trying to make things better. You wouldn't let me help." Norma's eyes softened, though her voice stayed steady. "You weren't helping, Angela. You were fixing things that weren't broken, and breaking what was still whole." That landed hard. Angela stared at the table, the wood grain blurring beneath her tears. "I didn't mean to hurt you," she whispered. I thought I was doing what was right." Norma leaned back, crossing one leg over the other. "You weren't doing what was right," she said quietly. "You were doing what was easy." Angela wiped her eyes, mascara streaking faintly. "I don't have anything left," she said. "No house, no credit, no job worth keeping. I don't even know where to start." "Then you start where you should have started years ago," Norma replied. "By telling the truth." Angela looked up, voice trembling. "Mom, I need help. Please. Just enough to get back on my feet. I'll pay you back." Norma's face softened, but her tone didn't bend. "You want help? Earn it." Angela blinked. "How?" Norma finished her coffee, the last sip cooled but still strong. "Live differently than you did before. Tell the truth even when it doesn't pay. Work for something you can look in the mirror about." Angela's lip quivered. "That's easy for you to say. You have everything now." Norma shook her head. "No, Angela. I have peace. There's a difference. Silence swelled between them. Long, heavy, honest. Norma reached into her purse, laid a $20 bill beside the check, and stood. Coffee's on me, she said. Start with that. Angela looked up, eyes red. That's it? That's enough, Norma said, and turned toward the door. As she stepped into the sunlight, the city's breeze met her like a benediction. The cafe's door swung shut behind her, muting the sound of Angela's soft sobs. Norma walked toward the corner, purse at her side, her reflection sliding past the cafe window. Small, composed, unshakable. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A message from Jude Moreno. You'll want to hear this. Just found out who your buyer was. She stopped at the crosswalk, thumb hovering over the screen. Norma. Who? A pause. Then 3 words appeared. Jude. Nonprofit group. National Seniors Equity Defense Foundation. They buy homes stolen by elder fraud and turn them into advocacy centers. Norma blinked, the traffic light shifting to green before she moved. She typed back slowly. So I sold my past to protect someone else's future. Jude. Seems that way. Congratulations, Mrs. Blake. You just started a movement. Norma slipped her phone back into her purse and looked across the street at the market crowd. The swirl of strangers. The easy rhythm of life continuing. Somewhere, maybe soon, someone else would get their house back because of her. She smiled, faint and full. Balance, she whispered to herself, crossing the street. Behind her, the cafe door jingled again. Angela stepped out onto the sidewalk, eyes searching the crowd, but Norma was already gone, folded into Charleston's warm afternoon, leaving behind nothing but the echo of quiet dignity and the soft scent of coffee. 3 months passed before the first press release went out. Charleston Herald, former fraud victim partners with National Seniors Equity Defense Foundation to open local resource center. The accompanying photo showed Norma Blake, composed and dignified in a navy dress, standing on the porch of her old house, the same one that had once been stripped from her name. The headline didn't call her a survivor. It called her a founder. Behind her, a bronze plaque gleamed against the newly painted doorframe, the Harold Blake Resource Center, dedicated to protecting the dignity of seniors and restoring what was taken from them. Norma traced the engraving with her fingertips. Harold would have hated the attention, but he would have loved the justice. You always said we'd fix people's smiles, she whispered. Guess we still are. May clapped her hands together. Well, would you look at that? You're in the newspaper and not the obituaries. I'm proud of you, sugar. Norma chuckled. That's a first. Inside, the house looked nothing like the one she'd left behind. The stale resentment had been scrubbed out with fresh paint and sunlight. Desks lined the front parlor, stacked with brochures about fraud prevention. A sign on the mantel read, "Respect is a form of repayment." 2 volunteers from the foundation set up laptops at the dining room table. Derek sat with them, guiding a woman through a digital security setup. You want to click that lock symbol before you enter any password, he said gently. See? Green means you're safe. The woman, probably in her 70s, smiled shyly. I'm not good with these newfangled things. You are now, Derek said, his tone easy and kind. He'd filled out since finishing his HVAC certification, but the confidence in him wasn't about size. It was purpose. When Norma caught his eye, he waved, boyish grin still intact. Grandma, you should see how many folks showed up already. I do, she said. That's the best part. May leaned in. You realize you've created a small empire, right? Next thing you know, they'll be naming streets after you. I don't want a street, Norma said, looking around the bright, busy house. Just a ripple. Ray left Charleston quietly that spring. No goodbyes, no explanations. Just a final notice to a P.O. box in Savannah. Rumor had it he'd taken a contracting job somewhere out west. He sent no address. The silence suited everyone fine. Angela stayed. But staying wasn't the same as standing still. She worked part-time at a local boutique, irony not lost on her, given how she used to scoff at small money jobs. Some afternoons she'd walk by the resource center, pretending not to look through the window. Norma saw her once, lingering across the street, hair pulled back, wearing an apron dusted with glitter from the shop's displays. Their eyes met briefly. Angela nodded, just once, like a truce that didn't need words. Norma nodded back. That summer, Gareth Rowe hosted a private exhibition in his downtown gallery, a restoration event, invitation only. The sign outside read, "Treasures Reclaimed, the Blake Collection." Glass cases sparkled beneath soft lighting, displaying the jewelry Norma had once pawned. Gareth had bought back several of her pieces through auction, discreetly, quietly, and restored them to their original brilliance. Norma arrived with May on her arm, her new sapphire brooch glinting against her lapel. The crowd parted a little when she entered, as if everyone instinctively understood the gravity of what those glass cases represented. Loss turned to legacy. This one, Gareth said, pointing to the Art Deco pendant that started it all, was nearly scrapped for melt value. Instead, it's now insured for $92,000 and part of a traveling exhibit on family provenance, a rare piece with an even rarer story. Norma smiled faintly. "It's funny," she said. "I sold that pendant to buy freedom. Now it's teaching people what freedom costs." May sipped her champagne. "And you got a museum wing out of it." Harold would have fainted. "He would have complained about the parking first," Norma said, and both women laughed softly. As the evening wound down, the lights dimmed to a golden hush. Gareth raised a glass. "To the woman who reminded us that value isn't what's inherited, it's what's reclaimed." Norma didn't like speeches, but she allowed herself one moment of stillness. The reflection of the pendant shimmered across the glass, faintly overlapping her own face. She could almost see her younger self there, smaller, uncertain, but burning with quiet resolve. She turned to Gareth. "You ever think some stories start where they're supposed to end?" He smiled. "Only the good ones." Later that night, the exhibition hall emptied and Charleston's streets glowed under the lamplight. Norma and May walked slowly to the car, the evening air sweet with jasmine. "You've done something special," May said. "Something that'll outlive the noise." Norma looked up at the stars, faint through the coastal haze. "It's not about outliving it, it's about outlasting it." May nodded, arm looped through hers. "You've outlasted everything, honey." Norma didn't answer. She just looked back once through the gallery window, where the pendant hung like a heartbeat under glass. In the reflection beside it, she could still see Harold smiling, the way he always did when something finally made sense. Morning light spilled through the lace curtains of the blue house, gilding every surface it touched. The hardwood floors shimmered like honey. The air carried the faint hum of Charleston waking. Distant gulls, the creak of docks, the slow rhythm of a city that had learned to forgive and forget in equal measure. Norma moved through the stillness in her slippers, the scent of fresh coffee following her like a shadow. Her house was quiet now, not the heavy, fearful quiet of being overlooked, but the kind born of peace. She passed the framed newspaper article on the wall, the one declaring the Harold Blake Resource Center officially open. Beneath it, the bronze key pendant sat on her windowsill, its metal catching the early sun. It had been returned to her after the exhibition, a gift from Gareth, wrapped in blue tissue and a note that read simply, "Every story deserves its full circle." She ran her finger along the cool edge of the pendant. Once it had meant inheritance, then survival. Now it meant arrival. From the radio in the kitchen, an old piano melody played faintly, one Harold used to hum while fixing the porch light or polishing his dental tools. The song drifted down the hallway like memory in motion, threading through the morning air. Norma poured her coffee, added nothing to it, and carried it to the porch. May sat in her usual chair, crosswords spread out across her lap, reading glasses perched at the tip of her nose. The coastal wind teased the pages. "You're late," May said without looking up. "I was about to send a search party, or at least text Gareth to come check your pulse." "I was visiting old ghosts," Norma said, settling beside her. "Turns out they're well behaved today." May chuckled, flipping a page. "Good. Ghosts should know when they've been evicted." They sat for a while, the silence easy, broken only by the hum of cicadas and the low notes from the radio. Across the street, the resource center's windows caught the sun, bright and alive. Norma's phone buzzed on the table. She picked it up and smiled. From Derek. "First paycheck from my new job." "You started this, Grandma." "Thank you." Attached was a photo. Derek standing in front of a small HVAC van with his name printed neatly on the side, holding his check in one hand and grinning like the world had finally said yes. May leaned over. "Well, would you look at that? That boy's finally learned to use his hands for something other than pocketing bad habits." Norma's smile deepened. He learned from the right people. Eventually. "Lord," May said, shaking her head. "You've got the patience of a saint." Norma took a sip of coffee. "No," she said softly. "Just good timing." The hours slipped by gently. May leafed through the paper while Norma tended to her garden. Roses, now in bloom, stretching toward the light. The blue house seemed to breathe with her, every creak and whisper of its walls content. When the afternoon sun leaned west, May unfolded the last page of the newspaper and tapped it with one polished finger. "Horoscopes are nonsense," she said, "but I always read them in case they get something right." "What's mine say?" Norma asked, still kneeling in the soil. May cleared her throat dramatically. "Capricorn. The things taken from you are finding their way back. The universe is returning balance. Take back what's rightfully yours." Norma paused, her hands still in the dirt. The breeze lifted the edge of her sleeve, cool against her skin. She looked up toward the porch, where the key pendant glowed on the sill like a small, defiant sun. Then she smiled, the kind of smile that comes when every scar has finally turned into proof of survival. "Seems the universe is a little late," she said, "but better late than never." May folded the paper, eyes soft. "You always did have to teach the world its own lessons." Norma rose, dusting off her knees. Someone had to. As twilight approached, she stood again at the window, watching the day fade into its soft, forgiving blue. The pendant gleamed beside her reflection, and for a moment she could see every version of herself layered there. The young bride, the mother, the widow, the woman who refused to disappear. The piano on the radio swelled, the final chords warm and familiar. Norma whispered to the empty room, to the memory of Harold, to the girl she used to be, "We did it." Then, with a steady hand, she reached for the pendant and placed it back around her neck. It felt lighter than she remembered, like victory worn instead of weight carried. May called from the porch. "Norma, you coming out or you planning to admire yourself all night?" Norma laughed, tucking the pendant against her chest. "Just finishing a thought." She joined her friend outside. The first stars blinked through the violet dusk. The porch light came on automatically, a soft golden halo around everything she'd rebuilt. May raised her glass of sweet tea. "To taking back what's rightfully yours." Norma clinked her cup gently against it. "To remembering it was always mine." The wind shifted, carrying the scent of jasmine through the air. The blue house glowed steady against the falling night. Norma leaned back, the brooch at her collar winking in the lamplight, the key pendant resting against her heart. Her voice was quiet, almost reverent, when she finally spoke the last line of her own story. She said, "I didn't need jewelry, so I pawned it and bought the deed instead."